Hi, my name is Abby, and this is my grace story. I grew up in a Christian home, so you could say that I've known Christ my whole life. Both of my parents were strong and still are very strong Christians, along with my two brothers. But I wouldn't say that Christ meant as much to me. When I was 6 months old, my parents adopted me from South Korea, and I knew that my story was different from most of my peers, but it never truly bothered me. I've met a lot of people along the way who have been adopted and feel ashamed and unwanted and just feel traumatized because of their story, because they felt like their parents or their birth mothers didn't want them. And so I think at that point I was curious about my adoption and why. And so I asked my mom one day, why did you decide to adopt? And she told me it wasn't my decision, it was God's. And I think that wasn't the answer I was expecting, and so that really put God into perspective for me. I think in that moment I knew that out of the billions of families that God could have put me with, He chose this one, or He could have allowed my birth mother to have an abortion. And Jesus says that before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and not a sparrow falls in the sky without my knowing. And I think that my mom truly believes that God worked through my birth mother, and I think that was really telling for me that Jesus was the one that I truly wanted to give my life to. I've been thinking a lot about getting baptized in the past year or two, but I didn't know when the right time was. I remember when I was about 8 years old, and a lot of my friends were gonna get baptized, and I think that kind of threw me for a loop, because I was thinking well, how come I haven't thought about that? How come all of my friends are yeah, I'm ready to get baptized, and I wasn't. I felt like I didn't have this one big moment in my life where I was yeah, and God just came to me. That's just not how it was, where a lot of my friends had either traumatizing stories or something in their life where they were this is why I want to give my life to Christ, and I didn't have that. So I felt insecure about telling people my story, because it just didn't seem as exciting, or wow, that's crazy, your story's so cool, and felt it wasn't going to be remembered. I just wasn't ready to make that lifelong commitment to Jesus, and I didn't want to get baptized just because my friends were. I wanted to get baptized when I knew that I wanted to fully dedicate my whole life to Jesus and give myself to Him. This had to be a decision that was made when I knew truly who God was and what He truly meant to me, and I do now. I started going to Camp Hickory Hill when I was 8 years old, and I was a camper for about 4 years. In my third year at camp, I had a leader who was already a mom, so spiritually she was a lot older in her spiritual life than my other camp counselors, because they were 18, 19, and she walked me through even though I knew that Jesus had died on the cross for me and what that meant, she truly walked that through with me. And I think in that moment, there's the last night of camp, you have the opportunity to stand up and say that I truly give myself to Christ, and I did that night, and I think that was a really big step for me moving forward. My family started going to Randall since I was about 2 years old, so Randall really has been a really big part of my life. I mean, I think baptism to me means a lot more than it did then, just because these are the people that I grew up with, and they know me and who I am, and have watched me become the person I am today. Moving forward, as I step into the real world and become independent and truly explore who I am in Christ, I know that I can't do this journey alone, because I've tried, and I'm really excited to see what God has in store for my future and where this next chapter of life takes me.